Welcome back to You Must Be an Imposter. Don't worry, you haven't tuned into the wrong show. We're still the same team from You Must Be Woking, but today's episode is part of our brand new series called You Must Be in the Spotlight, where we'll be taking our same ethos of having honest and sometimes difficult conversations, but shining the spotlight on guests who can really bring to life some of the topics and issues that have a real impact on today's workplaces and beyond. Today, Dawn and I are delighted to welcome into the spotlight Zoe Trigwell. Hey, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Good. So at only 31 years of age, Zoe has built an enviable cosmetics business working with some of the biggest brands around, including Sephora, Pretty Little Thing, Beauty Bay, Debenhams, John Lewis. And Zoe and her products have also featured in big magazines like Vogue and on ITV's This Morning, newspapers all over the UK, and so I'm really proud to say you were voted the 2023 Young Entrepreneur of the Year as well.
I forgot about that, actually.
Check you out.
Thank you.
Well, it's really lovely to have you with us today in the studio as well. So
I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
It's amazing. We're really looking forward to the conversation. So we normally start the episodes by quoting either a news story or for these In the Spotlight episodes, we like to read something that's a bit personal to our guests. Mm-hmm. So today, if you don't mind, I'm going to read one of your posts just to put you on the spot a little bit.
I love this post, I have to say. I love it.
So this is one of Zoe's posts, and she writes, I met my younger self for coffee today. I was there waiting. She was late due to procrastinating in the car because she was nervous coming in on her own. She ordered a hot chocolate, as did I. I told her we still don't really like coffee. She told me she felt scared for the future as she had just become a single mum after leaving a toxic relationship. She doesn't know how she'll cope. I told her everything would turn out fine and that she's getting married this year and her baby is now 10 years old with a little brother too. I told her she'd been the rock to her eldest, especially, and worked so hard for her kids and is giving them an amazing life. She said she just started a makeup blog and talked really passionately about it. I told her we now have our own makeup brand and have really found our calling. She told me she felt sad and lonely most of the time. I told her we'll still feel like that for a while with lots of ups and downs, but she'll get there. And I reminded her she's going to be okay, to keep working at her dreams and the future is good. I hope to meet her again one day. I love that post.
That almost made me a little bit emotional. I can remember crying my eyes out writing it.
Love that post. And I guess it sums up, it's the perfect reason why we invited you into the spotlight, really, because, you know, you're a young female entrepreneur. You've achieved a huge amount with your cosmetics brand. And I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about that. And, you know, even the Entrepreneur of the Year award that you achieved as well. But yet on your socials, unlike most influencers, and I am calling you an influencer because you have got quite a big following, but unlike most influencers, you don't only post the good stuff. You actually talk really openly about quite important topics, we think, things like imposter syndrome, mental health, how you're feeling, the struggles, the anxieties of everyday life, and just trying to, you know, make your way in the world. And we just thought, wow, what a refreshing way to kind of open the pod by talking about that. So welcome. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Is that all right?
Yeah, I loved it. I think that post was a really, like, a weird one, hard one to write because it brought up so many different emotions just from, like, my journey of starting to become an entrepreneur in the very, very early days when I just had, like, my eldest now, my little boy. But I think it's so important just to be super open because I try and do it myself because I never saw that in any entrepreneurs that I would follow. No one was ever really very open. So I do it in hopes that, like, if someone's feeling in a similar way that maybe I'm feeling now, or maybe I was feeling 4 or 5 years ago, that they can just resonate with that and just be like, it's all right. Like, just chill. You'll be all right. Yeah. It is really hard and it's rubbish sometimes.
So true.
You just crack on with it. You'll be fine.
Yeah.
You know?
And everybody else makes it look so easy. Yes. Like their Instagrams and their kind of socials make it look really easy, but it's not.
It's not. It's so hard. And I think it's refreshing sometimes to see it just being so raw and open and honest because everything is so black and white. No one really talks about, like, that middle ground. You either are starting out and, like, it's really hard, or you're there and you've made it. No one talks about, like, the struggle in between. So I like to try and show that little bit of, because that's the stage that I'm at. I'm still in that little in between stage, you know?
And I think even one generation. 20 years ago, I set up my business as a single mum, and I can relate totally to the story you said. It made me really emotional, but I didn't talk about it. And I almost tried to create a new persona as a result of that.
Yeah.
So it's fabulous that just in 20 years we can do that.
Absolutely. I think like the conversation has changed so much. Like people are a lot more open, especially about things like mental health. Not as much as I would like, but I think it's getting there.
It's definitely improving, I think, for sure. And well-being, the focus on people's well-being, particularly at work or, within friendship groups and stuff, it is shifting the dial a bit. And I think it can only be a good thing. So the more we can do that, kind of sharing our experiences, I think is amazing.
Definitely.
Cool. Where should we start then? Take us back to the beginning if you can. So, because I think I read this right. Before Trigwell Cosmetics, you actually had an academy, a makeup academy or something, didn't you?
Yeah. So it started as, like you've mentioned in that post there, I started out by just writing a blog. I was working for Welsh Water, the water board, on the phones.
Yeah.
Hello.
Dara Cymru.
Yeah. Working for Welsh Water on the phones, and I just had like a passion for makeup. I always had a passion for makeup, always loved makeup, and decided I was going to start a blog because that was the thing that everyone was doing, was very like creative in like writing and stuff like that. I thought, yeah, let's do it. Did that, and it sort of just sparked something inside me. So I decided to just start doing makeup. Instagram was very new at the time. Started doing a little bit of makeup on myself, taking photos, what they used to call like flat lays, where you used to lay all the makeup out and take like a really aesthetically pleasing photo and then post it on Instagram. Those days, like a long time ago now. And then I used to have people that I knew, friends of friends, saying, we've seen you post this. Would you ever like do makeup on anyone else? And I was like, no, never. I'll never do it. And then I did. A friend of mine that I went to school, I always remember she was the first person, Leah, her name was. I did her makeup and she absolutely loved it. And she was like, I want to book you. I got a party to go to next week. And I was like, okay. And I thought, this could be a thing. Yeah. So started doing makeup mobile. It snowballed. I got really, really busy. Ended up quitting my job in Welsh Water because it was costing me more money to go to work on a Saturday, because I used to be scheduled in to do a Saturday, than it was to do makeup. So I thought, I'll quit. What's the worst that can happen? Eventually ended up opening up my own makeup training academy. Wow. And then COVID happened. And then Trigwell was born.
Of course, because I suppose then you just started out in a makeup academy and then you're told no one can come and see you. I
did about 18 months in the makeup academy. So it was going really, really well. And I was actually pregnant at the time that we had to close, and pregnant at the time of COVID with my now youngest. And I thought, now's the time. We can have a baby. I've got the business in a really good place. I'll be able to take a good 6 months maternity, and then COVID happened.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
So, but everything happens for a reason. I wouldn't have Trigwell Cosmetics if it wasn't for COVID. So I think it's
And so how did that come about then? So obviously you'd taken this blow, as in, your academy had to stop, close. And so tell us what happened next. Where did this come from then? Because you've been knocked back. Most people at that point would think, I need to go back to work. I need to go back to Welsh Water and get back on the phones or whatever.
There was no chance I was going to find people were finding like little jobs in Tesco. I thought I cannot go and work in Tesco. I've worked for myself now for like 4 years. Yeah. I felt like I was unemployable because I just felt like no one can tell me what to do. I've been on my own for 4 years. So I thought, what's the worst that can happen? I think it was maybe £600-700 left in my savings. Wow. And I said to Gareth, my partner, I'm going to start the brand. I already had plans to start a makeup brand before COVID had happened. And I said, I'm going to start it now. They were all like, Zoe, we got no money. Like, why are you doing this? And I was like, I'm just going to do it. What's the worst that can happen? And I started Trigwell. I bought 1,000 pairs of eyelashes, named it Trigwell Cosmetics, and I sold them all within I think less than a week.
Wow.
They all sold. And I was like, told you I could do it. And I was just bored, to be honest with you. I said, I used to work so many hours in the academy, and I said, I cannot sit on my bum all day in COVID. I've got to do something with my time. So that's really where Trigwell came from, mostly out of boredom. And it was meant to be a little bit of a stopgap until I could reopen the academy, but snowballed into something a little bit bigger.
Yeah. Wow. And did you have any doubts about that kind of, because you sounded really confident then when you were talking about, this had knocked me back, but I'm like, no, I'm going to do it. Any creeping doubts come in when you were...
Oh my God, loads, all the time. And I'm always the type of person that has doubts constantly. And I think it's such a natural thing to do, especially when you're taking such a big leap. And especially when it comes to like money and risking money in business, it's always you're going to have a little bit of doubt. And I think that's such a natural thing to have in business. But I am the type of person, if I need to make something happen, I will make it happen, no matter what the doubts are. I'll just try and shut those out for a second and push on.
I love that. So what happened next then? So you've sold your 1,000 eyelashes. You're off and running. Tell us where you went from there.
So it just sort of, I thought, well, this could maybe be a bit of a thing. So made my next product, which was brushes. I knew I wanted to take it down like that makeup artistry from my background. And I thought, right, brushes are going to be the next thing that I'm going to do. What else can I do? I started looking into complexion products, colour cosmetics. And it was mostly just serving South Wales, my clients, friends of clients. And then TikTok came about. So I got on TikTok and just started filming myself. I was first on my dining room table, and then we converted my garage into like a little packing room. And I used to just literally film TikToks, about 4 or 5 TikToks a day I would film. And I had this, honestly, a little bit of like a light bulb moment. And I thought, what is going to help this brand? The brand was doing okay. It was making me a little bit of money, but I thought this could be like a really good brand. I had like massive faith in myself that I could do something bigger. And I thought, what is going to be the one product that's going to make us stand out? And then it was honest like a light bulb, like I said. I thought powder puffs. I saw a couple of people in the US using cheapy little Amazon triangle powder puffs. And I thought no one really uses them. They were something from like years ago that people used to like go in the bathroom and like top the makeup up with a little compact. Why is no one using powder puffs? So I bought a couple of Amazon ones and I thought I can do this way better. Let me try and do something. So made my own version of a powder puff, which then went viral in 2022. And then honestly, as cliche as it sounds, the rest was history with Trigwell.
You just kind of blew up after that.
Yeah, it's just like a viral moment. And then trying to just keep that momentum was the hardest part of it. But yeah, 2022. So it was a good 2 years before anything really happened with Trigwell Cosmetics. It was just a trial and error, seeing what was going to stick, you know?
I'm fascinated by this. What I'm finding is a bit of a contrast, right? Because you talk quite a lot about the imposter syndrome and the anxieties and all of that. And yet when I hear you talk, you're so confident that you're going to do this and you're going to smash that. And I just love that contrast between like how, you know.
It's almost like I've got 2 personalities. Some would say. And I think it's a little bit like that sometimes in business. Like I know what I want to do and I know what I'm capable of achieving, but then you've always got that little nagging doubt in the back of your head. And especially when it comes to like mental health, I've always struggled with my mental health. I've struggled with my mental health since I had my eldest son. Just after him, I had postnatal depression. And since that time, I've always been up and down. But I think it is just a little, like you said, it's a contrast in just having like the know-how and the confidence to know, no, I can do it. It's just how am I going to do it? And I think that's where that little doubt comes in. It's like, how am I going to achieve this? Is not knowing where to go, you know?
Love that. You talk about that quite a lot, don't you? The voice, the nagging voice that kind of that's telling you in your ear, you can't do this or you shouldn't do that.
Absolutely. The 3 or 4 voices, actually.
Yeah.
You know, I totally relate to that. And, you know, I'm at the other end of my career, but the reality of that situation is that it can be paralyzing, you know, 100%. If you've got to go and give a big speech or you're giving a big interview or whatever that might be, you know, if that's the wrong day, and it can be absolutely paralyzing. And it's not uncommon for me to come out of something like that and either be sick or faint is quite often.
Yeah.
And one of my colleagues used to meet me with a Mars bar and a Diet Coke straight afterwards because the anxiety of having to do some of that stuff was so massive. And it is literally this voice.
Yeah, I have exactly the same thing, just in the back of your head. Because like you're confident in your abilities, but at the same time, because some of these things you've never done before, like I say it all the time, I honestly don't know what I'm doing half the time. I've winged a lot of what I've done with Trigwell. And I think it's just knowing or not even not knowing what I'm going to do next. What is the next step? Something crops up and you think, I don't know how to deal with this. How am I going to deal with this? And the stress, anxiety that it causes is debilitating sometimes, isn't it?
How do you navigate
Absolutely.
that then? How do you, when you say, I don't know how to deal with this, what are the kind of things that you do to try and overcome it then? Because for some people, it can be completely debilitating, can't it? They can just go, I can't do it, and then give up. Or
To be honest with you, I don't overcome it. There's
Okay.
always something. I'll be totally transparent with that. There's still, even like up until maybe end of last year, I've had a lot of stuff going on in my personal life as well, which does have a huge effect when you're trying to run a business. And I've had days where I literally just don't get out of bed. And I think that is something that people don't talk about enough. Like
Yeah.
everyone puts on like this smiley, happy face, especially when you're on social media. But that's just not the truth. There's been days where I've just been in bed and I don't get over it. And I just have a mental breakdown about it. And I say, I'm going to quit. I don't want to do it anymore.
Love that.
And then the next day, I think you feel just a little bit better each day. And you think, no, get yourself up. You haven't worked this hard just to quit and throw it all away now. And I think I try and remind myself that of how the hours I've put in, the work that I've put into this business. And sometimes I think what really helps me is looking back at just the small things that I've done and trying to appreciate those. Because I feel like I don't. Sometimes a lot of people I feel like exactly the same. You don't take enough time to look at the achievements, even just the small achievements, and appreciate those things. You're always looking, what's the next thing that I can do, you know?
Yeah, I love that. You reminded me of somebody that I follow and I have done for years in my practice, a lady called Glennon Doyle. Have you ever heard of her?
I haven't, no.
You should check her out,
I
right?
will.
She's amazing. She's an American author, I guess, is probably the best way to describe her, but she does quite a lot of work on female confidence, and she has a podcast called We Can Do Hard Things, I think it's called. She's fab anyway.
Love that.
But she talks about when people have those kind of anxiety instance or times where they just feel like they it's too much, to stop fighting it. And she just said, let it come. So to your point where you say, some days I don't get out of bed, right? That's exactly what Glennon Doyle says. Just stay in bed then. Like who's gonna care? Let it come, because the sooner it comes, the sooner it can get lost again,
That's
right?
so
And
true.
you can just let it go. Whereas actually, if you try and fight it, you could be fighting it for a week, and that's debilitated you for a whole week. Whereas actually, if you just let it come, stay in bed, and get up the next day, it's all gone again. It's fine.
Yeah.
And I love that kind of philosophy that she has around stop fighting it, just let it come, because you can't beat it.
No.
So just let it come and let it go again. The sooner it comes, the sooner it can bugger off.
You end up, I think, wasting so much time trying to fight it, and you're less productive then as well. I've done it so many times where I've been in a little bit of a rut, or my mental health hasn't been the best, and I've tried to push on, as we all do. And you just think, just have a day off.
And you
Have a
hit
day
the wall.
off. Yeah, and you're not productive. You're not fun to be around. You just think, just go home, Zoe. Just go and have a day off.
Do you remember the first time it kind of hit you and you thought, God, this is something different. This is, this is imposter syndrome? Or when, because I think a lot of people would struggle to know when we talk about imposter, unless they've experienced it firsthand, or maybe they have experienced it but don't have a label for it, because it's not widely talked about, right?
Yeah. I think, I can't remember the first time. It's happened to me so many times and still happens to me regularly, to be honest. Probably for me, it's going back to when I had my first email from a retailer that wanted to stock us.
Wow.
And I can remember it so clearly. I was literally, it's so funny. I was in the middle of Asda doing my food shopping and an email came up on my phone. And I just looked and I was like, I don't know what's happening. And I just burst into tears in the middle of Asda and had to leave my food shopping, but just almost felt not worthy of that. And I thought the products aren't good enough. And why do they want me? Why do they want Trigwell? And just a little bit of a moment. And then you just have to tell yourself, no, the products are good. Come on. But yeah, I think that was probably my first spell of imposter syndrome, I would say, when we had that like first email.
I love that.
But that in itself applies pressure then, doesn't it?
Oh,
'Cause
absolutely.
the expectation then, I had something similar. We won a massive contract 9 months into the business that we were up against people 100 times bigger than us and never expected to win it.
Yeah.
And we did. And then the reality hit. And it was that moment of euphoria turning into, oh, right, now we've actually got to deliver what we've promised.
Yeah.
And that was the bit for me.
It's the
How did
unknown
that
as
feel?
well.
Yeah.
exactly the same, especially because when we ended up signing up with Beauty Bay, which was the first retailer, I didn't even mention that. That was the first retailer, was Beauty Bay.
Nice.
We were literally still, it was myself and my partner Gareth, it was only the two of us, and we were still doing everything from the garage. So it was a bit like, how are we going to do this? And I'm always the type of person, I say yes first and then I figure it out later. And they said,
Sounds like someone else I know.
It'll be all right.
We'll do it. We'll just figure it out. And I can remember coming off the first call that I had with them, and they said, can you deliver us 10,000 units of velvet powder puffs? And I was like, absolutely. And I thought, I don't have 10,000 units of velvet powder puffs. What am I going to do? And I thought, what if I just agreed to? And leading up until that delivery day, we delivered them ourselves in a little van that we rented. We were hand stickering because they had to have barcodes. I didn't even know what a barcode was or what to do with that. We were hand labeling barcodes up until 4 a.m. the morning that we actually left to go and deliver them up into Manchester. So
that sounds familiar, doesn't it?
You just make it happen, don't you?
Love it. That's such a good story. Literally, we're going to have to clip that up because I love it. So you're making it now, right? You're working with these bigger brands. Tell me about your experience as a young kind of female in this world of now suddenly working with big brands that you were thinking, oh my God, why do they want me? And now you're in the room. Like, what was that experience like for you?
Strange, really, because again, going back to imposter syndrome, you don't really feel worthy. Like, I'm literally just from a girl from Newport in South Wales. In my head, I'm nobody because I'm only from like a little town. So why do they care about little old me, and why do they want to have these conversations? But it's almost just trying to put your big girl pants on and just trying to have the conversation. And I've always been very open with all of the retailers that we've signed up with and said, look, this is where we are in the journey. This is who we are. And I think a lot of them have just been very supportive and especially understanding of how open I've been. And we're not a massive corporation, so please don't expect us to act like a massive corporation. We don't probably have the same systems that you're used to dealing with. Guide us a little bit. And I think that openness has really helped with that part of the journey, but it's definitely daunting. Definitely.
And have you had any bad experiences? I mean, I don't expect you to name any kind of retailers or anything, but have you had any bad experiences as a young, entrepreneur in those kind of big environments or with those big retailers?
Not with any of my retailers. I've always had really, really positive experiences with every single one. Every person I've ever spoke to has been brilliant. I've had some like weird experiences with people in the industry, I would say, that I've sort of been guided towards. I had a conversation with someone probably about a year after things really started to blow up for Trigwell. I was introduced by a friend of a friend to a financial advisor. Financial advisor said, let me introduce you to another friend of mine. He'll come in, he'll look at your profit and loss, he'll pick it apart for you and see if there's any improvements that can be made. So I said, yeah, feel free. Like, as long as it's not costing me anything, I'm open to having a conversation with him. Like, there's always improvements that can be made. He came in, I can remember the day he walked in, I asked my dad to come in the room because, again, I'm sometimes quite naive, especially in the early days. I've never had these conversations. I've never ever dealt with a profit and loss. I honestly don't even know. I'm not a finance guru. And he came in and the whole conversation, he directed every single bit of the conversation to my dad. And my dad multiple times said, you're going to have to ask Zoe that. It's her business. And he looked and then he'd direct the conversation back to my dad. And I'd be like, why are you not talking to me? I have the answers. That was a bit of a that's one of the negative. But in terms of retailers, no, I would say that I've had a pretty good run with any professional conversations that I had. It's just the odd one or two. Nice. I think especially being like a younger female, you're sometimes not taken as seriously that you should be, Yeah,
and they should take you seriously, what you've achieved. So I guess the other thing I'm really kind of interested to know as well, because your brand has kind of leaned into a more inclusive tone as well, right? So you've done a variety of different shades and all of that kind of stuff with your makeup. Tell me a little bit more about that.
I think it comes down to just my experience as a makeup artist. I know I've talked about it a fair few times about me being from South Wales, but South Wales, I wouldn't say is as diverse a place as other parts of like the UK, like London, Manchester. So there's been times as a makeup artist for me when I've done different complexions and people have been confident enough to come to me as a makeup artist because I had the skills to do different complexions that other makeup artists in the area didn't have.
Yeah.
So I sort of really wanted to make sure that if I was going to do anything, especially to do with complexion, but even down to like blush, that it was available for everyone. Like everyone could use that product. There's just no point for me bringing out a product and only a certain type of skin tone can use that. I just think that's completely pointless as a makeup brand. And I think it comes down to, they say a lot of brands, oh, we don't want to invest, into deeper shades. Why? The deeper shades are there. The deeper clientele will buy that shade if you make it for them. If you're not going to make it, they're not going to buy from you. And that's why you're not seeing any sales from that area, So it comes down to just having clients of mine have negative experiences with makeup artists, and then that really pushed me towards wanting to ensure that I had that inclusivity within the range that I was going to bring out in the cosmetics as well.
Nice. And I've seen it's not just women either, right? That use your makeup. You have
everyone.
Men use it. I think some of your adverts I looked at had like drag queens and stuff using it.
So, everyone. I think anyone that wants to use makeup should be free to do it. And a brand should showcase anyone that could possibly be a customer. Whether like it's down to skin tone, like ethnicity, sex, whatever it may be. Like I think you should just represent who your customer is. And like a Trigwell Cosmetics customer is absolutely everyone and anyone really. And I always want to make sure that's reflective in like any marketing that we do as well.
Nice. Love that. It's a music to our ears, that kind of stuff, right? Because that's our bread and butter. So that makes us smile. But actually, representation is also important to you in other ways, isn't it? Because you've done quite a lot of going out into schools and having conversations. And so tell us a little bit more about that and why you do those things. Why is that important to you?
I think just because, again, like going back to, I never really had anyone to really look up to in any sort of way. And just trying to make sure there's representation of someone who came from a really small town. That's always super, super important. I think it's part of my story as a founder as well, but also something that I just want to prove that you don't necessarily have to be from a big city to do bigger things. And like from the school situation, I like to go in and just say, like, look, you don't have to necessarily move to London. You don't necessarily have to move to Manchester. You can still stay in your tiny little town and you can make an impact, especially in the day and age that we're in now with social media. I think it's really, really important just to showcase how easy it is to actually get out there. You don't need to like make these big, bold moves. You can be just like a small fish and make your way out into the world,
Yeah, nice. And I love that you pay that back and you're doing that for younger people as well, to see that kind of representation. I think it's really important, isn't it? Tell me a bit more about your feelings about social media then, because it's been fundamental to your business, right? But there's also some dark sides to social media too, right?
Absolutely. I got a love-hate relationship with social media. I always say to like my friends and family, if I didn't have a business that was so reliant, I would not be on social media at all. And that probably like comes as a surprise because I literally more or less am the face of my brand and I put my face to every single video that we do. But it does definitely have a dark side. And I think people are very like quick to jump on bandwagons. Sometimes from like an anxious point of view, you're scared of putting certain things out into the world because you're thinking, how's that going to be taken? I mean it in this way, but is somebody else going to take it in a different way? And there's always that risk that something's not going to be taken in the way that you intend it. And then you've got cancel culture. So it's a love-hate relationship. I love what social media can do, especially for businesses like myself. But I definitely think you've got to be really, really mindful about what you do put onto the internet as well, because it can be dangerous. And
have you had any kind of backlash against the videos and the things that you post from a work perspective? Is there kind of, because there's something, we've seen it for different brands that we've worked with where they've had, they do something well-meaning and then suddenly somebody turns it into something that's just wasn't what it was intended to be, or
I've never had anything from the brand. I've had a couple of things from a personal point of view where people have made like fake accounts and they end up having a little bit of like a troll. And well, I had one person troll me for a very long time and it did massively affect my mental health, not wanting to leave the house or anything. And that's just literally one individual doing something relentlessly. So it just shows that how big of an impact social media and the negative side of it can have on a person. Nothing really from Trigwell, but on a personal point of view, like attacking me personally when I think, that's not me. Don't make me out to be something that I'm not. But what you say on socials is sort of like a double-edged sword, isn't it? You can't really...
though, right? It must be, you've got enough to think about trying to set up and run a business to then being attacked personally. And, it must be distracting.
Really distracting. It did distract me for a very long time. And I think what a lot of people have taught me and told me is you just got to try and have a thick skin, but I don't have a thick skin.
It's easier though when someone says have a thick skin.
Have a thick skin, you'll end up growing and I think I haven't still. Like I've been doing this for such a long time. Like I've been on social media best part of 10 years and I still don't have a thick skin to any of it. So God knows people that receive thousands of comments of hate, how they feel. Like I have one comment and I'm in a mental spiral. But yeah.
And yet you still manage to push through and you still manage to kind of overcome that stuff.
Yeah, I think for me, it's my livelihood. I can't do my job. My business can't run without social media. So it's sort of a have your little cry, have your little mope around, and then think you've got to get back to it. Don't let people push you down and not do what you're supposed to be doing, because I'm good at what I do and I'm confident in what I do. And I want to make sure that I stay feeling confident in myself,
And have you ever had those moments where you just think it's just not worth it or it's too hard?
100%.
Yeah.
Probably the last year I've had so many of those moments. As I said, like when all of this trolling was happening, I wanted to give up numerous times. I even looked at like selling the business because I just said, I don't want to do it anymore. And then everyone's going, don't sell it. And then some people are saying, sell it, it's not worth your mental health. And I'm like, I don't know what to do for the best. I had like a good 6 months where I was sort of just plodding along and just doing the basics because I just didn't want to do it anymore, just because my mental health had taken such a toll from all of these things,
And you were saying your partner's been with you through this process from day one, helping you pack up the first, van load of things going to your retailers. What's the impact on the wider family? Because you've got 2 children.
2 kids, yeah. It definitely has an impact. And I think I'm more careful now with what I try and bring home, and I try and just leave it at the door and come in and have like a fresh perspective when I'm with like my family. But it's hard not to bring it home because especially with my partner Gareth, like he works in the business as well. So our life revolves around the business. So of course it's going to be brought home, and it does have a massive impact. They end up worrying about you, how many hours you're working, your anxiety over something that you might be working on or what you're doing. And I think as long as you've got a good support system, it's okay to have like those little like moments of like whether that a moment is a day, whether it's 6 months. I think just making sure you've got a good support system around you, whether that be friends or family. Like my family are incredible. I've got a really, really good support system that sort of helped me through those darker times.
You're Welsh. We all have that in Wales, right? That's a Welsh thing.
Definitely.
We're very proud of our family networks. Love that. Okay, so what I'd really like to do now, and I'm kind of opening this up to both of you actually, because we've already talked a little bit about you're both female entrepreneurs. You're both coming at this from kind of different perspectives, and you both openly talk about things like imposter syndrome, mental health, anxieties, these kind of things. So what's your advice, right? So Dawn, I'm passing to you to say, for workplaces and some of the brands and things that we work with, what should employers do and what could they do to try and help talk about this a bit more, normalize it, help people overcome it? And then Zoe, to you, my question is, what things have you put in place to help you kind of navigate that kind of stuff? What are the things that you do to try and keep yourself focused and overcome those moments of, deep imposter syndrome and anxiety as well? So there you go, no pressure.
So from an employer point of view, I'm coming at this from the perspective of being both a coach and a business leader, in that having experienced imposter syndrome, but also having worked with lots of people who have too. And the first point is coaches and mentors are immensely helpful in the workplace for this. And certainly in terms of part of the emotional intelligence and the resilience piece of that, I would absolutely encourage employers to provide coaches and mentors. I think one of the things that, and you mentioned it earlier, is almost what I call the brag book, that little reminder of the stuff you've done, and those moments where you're thinking, oh, just crap, just those reminders to help with that. I also am a big believer in visualization and playing that out, whether that be in the shower in the morning or whether that be in the car, and clearly always being Brittany in the car.
Yes.
The only way on the way to a big event is immensely important. So those kind of things can help. In terms of employers, good feedback loops where it's very safe, making sure that people are encouraged but also improved, can be hugely helpful. Having that good colleague, how to be a good colleague as well, to go 90% of that was great, 10% do this differently, really helpful. But also celebrating that progress rather than just the end result. For me, during my career, I knew that it was a slow improvement around public speaking, for example, or presenting, and just being in a positive mindset to be able to go, come on, that was better than the last time, now do it again. So those are some of the things I'd say. And again, from a personal perspective, accepting that okay is good enough sometimes. Your point about pulling the duvet up, I get that entirely. I too have bouts of really poor mental health, and there are some times where I have to tell myself that 60% is okay.
Yeah.
And I think once you can be confident and comfortable with that, to lean back onto it, it can really help. And therefore, employers who will accept that ebb and flow.
And I think the key bit there as well, so when you say, 60% is good enough, right? Actually, sometimes I would remind both of you this, that your 60% is probably like 90% for everybody else, right? So give yourselves a break, right? Because it's huge and it is massive. I guess the other couple of things that I would just add from an employer perspective. So one of the things that I think we should absolutely start doing in every organization, no matter how small you are or how big you are, is talking about it, right? So let's just call it out and help educate people on. And because it isn't just women either, right? And this is the other thing. People think that this is related primarily to women. It isn't. I'm a man. I have suffered with imposter syndrome many times in my career. We're just not very good at talking about it. That's the difference for men. But actually we should normalize talking about it, because people need to understand that we all experience it. And actually, if we can talk about it, or we can acknowledge, actually, we're having a bad day today, tomorrow will be better, we might just, remove the stigma that sits with it as well for people.
And I think we also have to take some personal responsibility in that as well.
Yeah.
As somebody who is a big advocate of female in the workplace, and but also we have to help ourselves.
Yeah.
And we have to learn these techniques. And sometimes we have to fake it. And,
fake it till you make it.
Absolutely. And we have to learn those techniques. And, certainly, I resonated with your point about whether you spoke to your dad. I have had that all my career around the world, where if I'm with a male colleague, they will assume that they are the more senior in the room. And I have learnt techniques to make it very clear that's not the case. Inside, I'm going, I'm this little girl. But I can stamp authority quite quickly and effectively. But that's a learnt behaviour. And
absolutely.
Therefore, I implore female as well to learn those basics of resilience and confidence and being able to fake those few sentences. And I have some stock sentences I use in those situations.
Oh, I love that.
And it's important to take some responsibility as well, because nobody's going to do it for us.
That's so true. So true.
That's why I've found, your profile and stuff so refreshing, because you don't hide that stuff. You don't hold back, and you do share it, and you do talk about it. And actually that's really quite refreshing, particularly for a kind of the next generation of talent that's coming through as well. So what we know about the next generation is that they are very much more educated in a growth mindset. So they think about these continual gains and our ability to do more and achieve more and all of that kind of stuff. But actually, they don't yet have the experience and resilience to navigate some of the challenges that perhaps other people in the workplace that have been in the workplace longer would have the experience to navigate. So actually talking about it the way you do is a great way of sharing that with other people. You're not alone, all of that kind of stuff. So
yeah. I think from my point of view, from like an entrepreneur's point of view, maybe, is how I tend to navigate it and help myself almost, as you've mentioned. I do a lot of helping myself, but also don't just rely on yourself to do that as well. There's so many different support systems. And what I've done for probably the best part of 4 years with Trigwell is hide it all internally. I obviously post about it on my socials and use that as my little outlet to vent and tell everyone how I'm feeling. But I almost wouldn't really ask for any help anywhere else. And I'd ask for help from like a mental health point of view, but I'd never ask for help where I needed it in the business. I'd assume that I could do absolutely everything and I didn't need any help. And it's only the last sort of year, 18 months that I've really lent on other people to have help. Having like mentors that have been there and done that has really, really helped me. And just reaching out to people and having open and honest conversations and be like, I don't know how to do this. And I've always been really scared to admit I don't know how to do certain things. But I think it's quite liberating sometimes. I know myself that I'm probably more of like a creative entrepreneur. I'm not meant to be like a boardroom type of entrepreneur. It's not me. I'm not good at it. And I think admitting those things sometimes and trying to focus on what your strengths are is actually better for you in the long run and will actually help. The imposter syndrome will help your mental health because you can lean on people that are good at those things,
Yeah.
I've done that a lot in the last year. But also, we've mentioned it a lot, but taking time away, not being scared to take time away from the business. If you are an entrepreneur, it's still going to be there 24 hours later if you decide to take a day off. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs as well are so scared and they get themselves to burnout point, and then they end up just packing it all in because they've just pushed themselves way too hard. And I've been there and I've done it time and time again. And sometimes just taking a day, 2 days, 3 days, it's not going to kill the business. Yes, you might have to work a little bit harder when you get back and you might have a few things to catch up on, but the business is still going to be there. And I think that's been crucial for me, helping myself to understand that I need to sometimes take a little bit of a break and a breather to be away from it.
That is so, so relevant. I can totally relate to that.
I have a thing that I do, and I learned this a few years ago. So I had a bout of anxiety a few years ago, and I think I've talked about this on the pod before, but, as a male, I never really believed in all of that kind of stuff, right? I kind of did, but I didn't. I'd never really experienced it. And I was always a bit like, roll my eyes a little bit if ever I heard it, until it happened to me, right?
Yeah.
And then I had this bout of anxiety and it was completely debilitating. I thought I was having a heart attack the first time I had a bout of anxiety, genuinely. And now I have kind of techniques. So a bit like the Glennon Doyle thing, when I know it's coming, I let it come. But my techniques are, so I have a young son and 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I'll think nothing now, closing the curtains, putting my PJs on. Me and Jake, we're on the sofa, we watch a movie, and he's like, why are we doing this, Dad, at 4 o'clock? And I'm like, the day's done, mate. We're done for the day. We're just shutting the world out. Because then tomorrow morning I get up and it's a whole different day and whatever else. And quite often, if I do that now, Jake, he gets quite excited by the fact that we're having a kind of a movie night or whatever. But actually, it's one of my techniques for, I've had a tough time, and rather than kind of keep plugging through it, it's time to just turn off the world, turn off everything else. And do you know what? You're right. It'll be there tomorrow and it'll all be fine and we'll carry on as normal.
I think that's such a good point as well. And it's finding, like you've obviously found something that works for you, is finding what that thing is. And that sometimes is a learning curve. It's taken me a long time to find what I need to do.
Yeah.
Like I said, I would literally just some days just lie in bed, and sometimes I need to do that for 24 hours. And it's finding and learning about yourself what the thing is that you need to do that will help you just get back to normal the day after, and whatever that normal may look like.
Yeah.
Love that. And I think I also talked about this before, but my old boss told me that whole stay in bed thing, right? So I remember saying to him, some days I just don't want to get out of bed. And he's like, so don't then.
Don't then.
And I was like, oh. Yeah, I couldn't I? And he's like, yeah, like who's making you? Like, just stay in bed then. And
Just
I'm
that
like,
removal of
wow.
pressure is massive, isn't it?
And
Somebody
is
going, it's okay.
Permission.
Yeah,
And
it's
it's giving
okay,
yourself
step
the
off.
permission, isn't it, to do that?
Definitely.
Love that. I guess the other thing for me is exercise. And I don't mean like I'm not a big weights person or anything like that. But, every now and again, just going out for a ride on my bike, I come back with a whole new perspective on life. And, I know they say about exercise, endorphins and all of that. And maybe it's that. But I literally do come back from a ride some days and I just think, wow, I could take on the world now.
Absolutely.
Fresh
I
air.
recently moved house and I've got an evening routine where I stick my earbuds in and I walk this circuit a couple of times. And it's not particularly strenuous, but it tells my brain it's bedtime then. And it's helped me loads.
I love that.
Well, listen, we're coming towards the end, so thank you so much for joining us. However, we have a couple of features that we want to do with you before you disappear. So in this new series of putting people in the spotlight, we're asking them a question called My First Boss. So essentially, we've all had them. We probably all remember our first boss. Some of us may even still be friends with them or know them or maybe not want to be anywhere near them, right? But we're asking our guests, if you could go back and give your first boss one piece of advice, if they were entering the workforce today, particularly as a leader, what would that advice be that you'd give your first boss?
I think mine to my first boss would be similar to the things that I've already touched on, is the whole place is not going to burn down if we don't do it right this second, and it'll still be there tomorrow if someone has a day off. And if they're ill or if they have family emergency, it'll still be there the day later.
Okay, I love that. Yeah, because people do, don't they?
Yeah.
Particularly when you're worried about work and all of that and you want to make things right, you do overthink some of that stuff.
Yeah,
I love that.
definitely.
Okay, so then the next bit is we've got some listener questions for you as well, because we put out that you were coming on and everyone was quite excited. We had quite a lot come through actually from the socials.
Really?
But we've selected a couple because there was quite a few themes in here. So this one is from Leanne on Instagram, and she says, Zoe, I've used your products since the powder puff went viral, and I find your content and attitude online so inspiring. Who inspires you online and why?
I tend to be inspired mostly. I always look up to like other entrepreneurs where I feel like they may be a few steps ahead of me. I really like Grace Beverly. She's like a classic one, I would say, for probably women my age. She's actually younger than me, but I feel like what she's achieved, she's very much, I find her quite like gritty, and she's like a do-it-yourself type of girl. So I find her really, really inspiring, and her work ethic amazing. I also look up to just other people that are in like the same industry as me. So Paige from P. Louise has built like a huge empire. She's always been a massive inspiration to me. She started in a similar way to me. She inspired me to do my makeup academy. She had a similar makeup academy in Manchester, and I thought there's nothing like that down in South Wales, so let's do it. And yeah, she's always been a massive inspiration. She's very much self-built, self-taught, and I find her brilliant. I think, again, she's just, I tend to lean more towards like very gritty, do-it-yourself type of like female entrepreneurs.
Nice. Love that. Okay. This one's from Misha on TikTok, and she says, you've been very open about your mental health. And if you could give me or any other young person out there one piece of advice, what would it be?
To be kinder to yourself. I think we're really hard on ourselves a lot of the time. And just look back on like the small things that we've mentioned that you've achieved, and just be proud of like the little steps, and whether where you are and where you want to be right now, or whether you've still got 10 years to figure out where you want to be, just be proud of the journey and just make sure you don't forget to like live in between it as well.
Nice. I absolutely love that. That sings to my heart. So I really love that response. And then our final question then, in the interest of time, is from Alex on Instagram. Where do you see your brand in 10 years' time? And what's the big dream now after you've achieved so much already?
Big dream for me is I want to get it into physical stores because we're not actually in any physical stores at all. So that is like my next step, I would say, the next 3 to 5 years, probably. 10 years, I see Trigwell global. I think I have massive aspirations for Trigwell. And I really think that it's a brand that can go global. I'd like to just see it everywhere on billboards, in people's makeup bags. You see them topping up their makeup if they're in the toilet somewhere in a random bar in Australia. That's what I would like to see.
Love that. Well, listen, if you do a brand launch in Australia or New York, we're there. We're coming.
Yeah, we'll all go.
Amazing. Oh, listen, thank you everybody for your questions. We had way too many to read out in the time that we've got left, but it's been brilliant having you here. But before you go, you have a job to do. This is Woke or Joke, our recurring feature, and you're going to set the challenge for us this time around, I believe.
I am.
Amazing.
Shall I get my phone to read it? Is that all right?
Go for it.
Okay, so is it true that a male company executive came under fire for sending a group message to his team asking the women to wear makeup in order to motivate the male employees? And that the gentleman would crowdfund an afternoon tea as a treat. After receiving no replies, he then messaged again and pretended it was a joke.
I'm going to say this is true. It's got to be woke, right? It's 100% got to be true.
Yeah, I think so.
It's true.
The minute you said a male said that, I was like, he's bound to put his foot in it.
It's crazy.
Decided
last
again.
minute after a little bit of backlash. Yeah, apparently it's true. A company in China actually came under scrutiny, faced backlash after this actually happened in a workplace. Gained a little bit of global attention, I think a little bit of media attention. And after, I think, a little bit of that, he said, oh no, it was a joke. It was a joke. But I don't think it was.
No,
it probably wasn't,
100%. Love that.
Oh, brilliant. Well, listen, thanks for joining in with our Woke or Joke as well, because it's always good. But that's it from us today. And thank you so much for coming into the spotlight.
Thank you so much for having me. I've loved it.
It's been amazing. And keep being you. Keep being really honest about your anxieties and
very
imposter
impressive.
syndrome. It's very impressive. It's very powerful.
You.
And we wish you nothing but success for your business
you
going
too.
forward.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for coming. Thank you for watching and listening. If you liked our discussions and our content, why not leave us a review? And so we can reach even more listeners. Also, don't forget to hit the subscribe or the like buttons and the follow buttons on anywhere you get your podcasts from. You can also find us on all the social media platforms at You Must Be Woking, or just search hashtag YMB Woking, where you can continue the conversation and get involved in the chat after the show.